Hello, 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 and welcome back to another edition of Fan Talk, your favorite podcast by your favorite fan. That is, of course, me, Kyle Brinchley, in the house on this Tuesday. The club's going up on a Tuesday. Welcome in. If this is your first time here, hello, what's up? What's good? My name's Kyle. If you're a returning listener and or watcher, thank you guys for coming back. You've guessed it, we're talking college basketball today. I am going to be explaining the difference between the conference tournaments and the NCAA March Madness tournament. It's kind of confusing. I've talked about them both in the last couple episodes, but today I'm going to be talking about the conference tournaments. Next week, I'll talk more about the NCAA March Madness tournament. It's a difference. They're two different things. Don't worry, I'll explain it all to you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Sit back and relax. Rogue One says, hello, the candle is not burning, but it's over there. Welcome. This is a podcast by me, Kyle Brinchley, that you can find anywhere you get your podcast. I also upload on YouTube, so just search Fan Talk Kyle Brinchley if you like the video versions. All right, guys, life update. It's really warm outside. And when I say really warm for this time of year, I mean 60 degrees. More snow is in the forecast, and we need it here in the 801. That is for sure. It's going to be a dry summer in more ways than one, if you know what I mean. And but it's nice to enjoy the sunshine. It's nice to get out. I went out running this morning, and beautiful day. Absolutely beautiful day. Beautiful day to tune in and talk college basketball. Man, it is March. It is the best time of the year, as Frank Sinatra saying. Here we are, and this is what we're going to be doing today. So, guys, thank you guys for joining. In college basketball, all the teams are put in different conferences, different groups. And at the end of the regular season, you play a tournament style. You're put in a bracket and you play a tournament against those teams in your conference. So most conferences have, 10, 12, 14 teams. Some have more, some have less. But you're in a tournament with those teams and you play to see who is the champion of your conference. And why does this matter? Because to get into the March Madness big dance, there's a couple ways that you can qualify. And I've talked about this before. If you want to go check out my bracketology video, I explain how those teams get in. But I will just briefly reiterate that 68 college teams get to compete in the 2025 NCAA men's basketball tournament. And so 31 of those teams qualify automatically by winning their conference tournament, by winning the group that they're in. And then the rest, the 37 other spots are called at-large bids. These are the teams that I've explained before where it's like a job interview. So they bring in their resume and they're like, these are my qualifications. These are the games I've won. These are the margin of victories, yada, yada, yada. Again, go check out my bracketology video. Stay tuned for another episode that I'll be doing here shortly, talking about the March Madness NCAA tournament. But today, conference tournaments. So 31 teams are going to punch their ticket or earn a spot into this March Madness tournament by winning their conference tournament. Easier said than done, right? Absolutely. This is very interesting because so there's kind of bigger conferences and there's kind of lesser conferences. So the bigger conferences, for example, one is called the SEC. It stands for the Southeastern Conference. They're very good at basketball. The Big Ten is very good at basketball. The Big 12 is very good at basketball. So teams in that conference tend to be more competitive, tend to be better teams than teams for example, there's a conference called the American East, or there's a conference called the Big West, or there's a conference called the Horizon League. These are conferences that the teams just aren't as good. They're lesser in some regard. So some of these lesser conferences like the Horizon League, the Ivy League, the CAA, they really want to win their conference tournament because that's probably their only shot to get into the big dance, the NCAA tournament. So these conference tournaments are a big deal for them. They're a big deal for the other big conferences too, like the Big East, Big 12. But a lot of those teams are like, we're already going to get in. We're probably going to get one of those at-large bids, but it would be nice if we did well in this conference tournament, but it's not crucial, if that makes sense. The stakes aren't as high. So that's kind of the two boats that we're in here with these conference tournaments. So some of these conference tournaments have already begun. All the teams, like I said, in the conference, in the group, are placed in a bracket, and they're given a seed. So the best one is like 1, and the worst one is like 12 or whatever, and they play. and you work your way through the bracket until you get into the final, obviously. And then once you win the final, you book your ticket to the big dance. So a lot of these have already been going on. Some of these smaller conferences like the American East and the Horizon League and the Big West, like some of these have already started. Some of the bigger ones are starting today. So I wanted to give you a little preview of some of the big ones starting today. I know maybe not all of you are watching these conference tournaments, but it is a good preview, a good sneak peek into the madness of March that will come with the big NCAA tournament. So if you have some free time in the next couple of days, I encourage you to go watch some of these games because people are playing their brains out to get a spot into the big dance. It's pretty crazy. So some of these start today, like the Big 10 doesn't start till Wednesday, same with the Big 12. Excuse me, the Big East, but the Big 12 actually starts today. And a couple of these games going on. The first round for local listeners, the University of Utah got an 11 seed in the Big 12 conference tournament. They're playing tonight versus UCF, University of Central Florida, who is a 14 seed. So Utah, very much uphill battle. They don't have a bye. A bye means you don't play the first round. So for example, BYU, another local team, they got the 4 seed, which means they get a double bye. So they don't play until Thursday. So let's say theoretically, a team like Utah or University of Central Florida wins tonight, they would have to play again tomorrow. And if they won again tomorrow, then they'd play on Thursday. So they would have already played 2 games, whereas BYU, a team like BYU who got the 4 seed and is resting, is just that, is resting, and they don't have to play till Thursday. So some consider this an advantage because they get more time to rest. Some consider this maybe a weakness because they're kind of standing around, and sometimes you build momentum when you play, even though you might be tired. You kind of have that juice in you, whereas if you're just kind of sitting around, you can really get stagnant and complacent. So interestingly enough, BYU obviously getting that double bye, so it'll be interesting to see how they do. They're in a very good position, in my opinion. Utah, not so much. So again, Big 12 is kind of one of those bigger conferences, one of more competitive conferences, might be a good way for you to understand it. And so a lot of those teams are currently projected to get, again, those at-large bids. They can get in without necessarily winning their conference tournament. Currently 8 out of the, let's see, I think there was 14 teams in the Big 12. 16 teams, 8. So half the teams are probably already going to get in. So really it's these 8 through 16 seeds that, could make a splash and could shake up the landscape. But we'll talk more about that in the future. And let's see, the Big East tournament, not starting until Thursday. The ACC, this one has Duke in it. And Duke obviously is the big dogs right now. But with Cooper Flagg, there's talk about him going first overall. There's talk about him staying maybe. But some of those games are happening today. And similar with, here, I'll just show you my screen to give you a better idea of what is going on. But similar to Big 12, the ACC is definitely a bigger, more competitive conference. And I wouldn't say it's the most competitive conference, but in years past, definitely. Duke obviously being a top dog. Louisville and Clemson kind of flying under the radar, but very good teams. But a more competitive conference. Teams like Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Stanford even, Syracuse, SMU, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia Tech. These are teams that probably aren't getting an at-large bid, which means they didn't do enough in the regular season. They have to prove themselves here in the conference championship. So some games starting today: Notre Dame, Pitt, Virginia Tech, California, Florida State, Syracuse. So let's say theoretically, let's do a theoretical. Let's use the ACC as a theoretical. Let's say theoretically, this team, Virginia Tech, they are not projected to get an at-large bid. They have not done enough. They have not been good enough. They currently do not qualify. So what they would need to do, they would need to win this game tonight against California. They would need to win their game tomorrow against Stanford. They would need to win their game against Louisville. And then they would need to win this game, whatever the winner of this game is, go to the championship game, and they would probably need to win the championship game. And it's very interesting. This is where it gets hard, and there's a committee of people in the NCAA who decide which teams get in and which teams do not. Sometimes, and this is don't use this as the rule, use this as the exception to the rule. Sometimes a team who is not projected to get into the tournament, who did not qualify, wins enough games in the conference tournament. So like Virginia Tech, let's say they won all these games and they get to the championship, but they lose the championship to a team like Duke, who's projected to win it. Sometimes the committee will be like, maybe they did enough. Maybe they beat a okay Stanford team. They beat a good Louisville team. And let's say Clemson won it, and they beat a good Clemson team. So that's 2 quality wins, like 2 really good wins, and then like an okay win against, Stanford. They might be like, okay, there's a couple more wins that they could add to their resume. So keep this in mind. Teams are still building their resume, still proving themselves to the committee in these conference tournaments. So that's why the stakes are so high for these teams that seemingly don't have a shot. Because you're like, Syracuse is a 14 seed? I don't know much, but I understand 14 is pretty high, and it's not a, 1, 2, 3, 4 seed. They're probably not going to make it. And you're right. The chances and the odds are against them, but that gives them even more to play for because, they can control their destiny. They just have to win, which obviously is very hard to do in these conference tournaments. But it is possible, and it does happen all the time. For example, in one of these smaller conferences, the University of Delaware is a team that has a losing record, which means they have more losses on the season than wins. And they didn't punch their ticket all the way, but they are in the championship game tonight and have an opportunity to get that conference tournament bid into the NCAA tournament. So it'd be interesting to see if they could do that with a losing record. March is crazy and anything can happen. And that's why these conference tournaments are so interesting to watch. So if you're kind of waiting around and being like, I'm just going to wait until Selection Sunday when all the teams get put in and I'm going to fill out a bracket and I'm just going to watch it when the tournament gets there. That's great. You do you. But if you want a sneak peek, if you want an edge, if you want a conversation starter at the water tower or at the coffee station or at the lunch table or in your class or wherever you are, then watch these conference tournaments. Pay attention to these games that seemingly don't mean anything to perhaps the outside viewer, but mean everything to these teams that are playing for their lives, for a shot at the big dance. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, and this is bigger than basketball, opportunity is out there and we just need to go grab it, right? It's there. You control your destiny. You choose how you live. You choose what you want. You go get those dreams. You know what I mean? Like it is out there. And these teams truly believe. It's interesting. You watch a TV broadcast and the broadcasters are talking about the game and the sideline reporter brings a report. Hey, I just talked to the coach of, Florida State 11 seed and, they didn't have a great season. They're the 11th seed in the ACC. They have a tough path. They have to go through SMU, Clemson, Louisville, and Duke. They're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament, but they believe they can. And they believe they will. Because if you have that desire, if you have that belief, crazy things can happen. And I've seen it with my own eyes. March is a crazy time for college basketball. Upsets happen all the time. It's absolutely wild. I'm so excited to see it. You guys need to watch these conference tournaments. Watch them. Get your little preview of the big dance, and then come ready for some insane March Madness craziness. It's going to be great. I am so excited. I'm going to be doing a lot more episodes more regularly. I'm going to have a couple guests come on. I'm going to have my brother come on. I'm going to have a friend from high school come on. And we're just going to be talking college basketball. We're going to help you dummies out there know everything you need to know about these conference tournaments and the big dance, maybe how to fill out your bracket. If you've never done it before, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're just picking your favorite color or your favorite mascot, we're going to cover it all. So stay close here at Fan Talk. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in to today's conference championship video. Again, this is a podcast you can find anywhere you get your podcast. I'm also on YouTube, so look me up. Leave your comments down below. Leave a like. Thank you guys so much for listening on this Tuesday. We'll see you guys next time for another edition of Fan